All right, Free Will and Franklin coming back at you right here on KPFA Radio. Thanks for sticking with us here on Full Circle. We're at 94.1 FM, KPFA, and online all the time at kpfa.org. And we are part of the Pacifica Radio Network. And next up, we're going to be taking a look at a recent in custody death of Tammy Manzanilla. And she died in custody after medical neglect back in April in Marin County. The family recently filed a wrongful death lawsuit and are looking to get the word out about what happened to their loved one and get their story out. So, coming up next, we're going to be speaking with Tammy's sister, that's Amy Berry, and the family attorney, Christian Contreras. So, first of all, let me welcome you to Full Circle and KPFA Radio. And of course, I want to send my sincere condolences to you all and your family to what happened to your sister Tammy. Today, we're going to be here to share your story in hopes that the work we do with you and the families will someday make a difference and there will be no more in custody deaths. There will be no more situations like happened to your sister Tammy. So, welcome to you, Amy, and my condolences again.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
having
also, oh, yes, yes. Thank you for having you. Yes, of course. And welcome to you, Christian. Thanks for jumping on the line and being here with Amy today.
Thank you as well.
Well, Amy, let me start with you and just first off, before we get into the story, can you just tell us a little bit about your sister so we get to know who she was? Um, Tell us a little bit about your sister and Tammy. Tell us about your sister Tammy, and before we get into the story of the jail.
Well, it's a long story. um, my sister is 2 years older than me. Our history goes back a long, long way. My sister and I were both born in Florida. My brother was born a year later in Chico, California, and we've been in California since then. Um, our birth mother was a prostitute, and she essentially allowed her clients access to us kids. So she eventually lost custody of us, and we ended up in foster care for a couple of years. More abuse occurred there. We were all finally adopted together at the ages of my brother was 6, I was 7, my sister was 9. So for the first 9 years of my sister's life, she she got a very poor foundation as far as like what's appropriate behavior and what is not. She also really questioned her value, I think, especially 4 years later when her adoption failed. So she went back into the foster care system at the age of 12. And from 12 through her teenage years, she was in no more foster homes, it was group homes. And then she aged out of the system at 18. So the only parent she ever really had was our adoptive parents for a short period, and then the government. The government was her parent for quite a long time. She did. She was a drug addict. She was always very, very hopeful for recovery. She spent a lot of time in recovery. She spent a lot of time on the streets. She spent a lot of time in Marin County Jail. She has probably close to 100 arrests, if not more. So they knew her very well at Marin County Jail. But we always, including my sister, has 3 children. Um, Always held on to that hope that she'd recover. She'd have long stints in recovery. The problem was that pull for the drug is very, very strong, and you really don't understand it unless you've experienced it. Um, and some of those feelings are very, very hard to handle. Um, so I'm certainly not condoning her drug use, but I understand the wanting to run away from that kind of pain. Um, so as a result, she self sabotaged a lot. She'd have relationships with her, who came to be her husband and the father of two of her children. Um, but there's a fear of losing that eventually. So she, I think, subconsciously would sabotage, because her expectation, and I fully understand, is that, well, this is eventually going to hurt. They're going to kick me out. I'm going to be abandoned again. So I may as well just screw it up now. And, you know, I'm in recovery myself. I'll be going into my 8th year sober. Drugs were never my thing, but alcohol sure worked for a while to numb some of those feelings. But, you know, eventually it stops working. And we really need some kind of higher power to do for us what we can't do for ourselves. She did believe in God, so I have confidence that she is in a better place. Um, but it's been very painful watching her go through this cycle again and again and again. So over the course of the last 5 years or so, I've been keeping tabs on her and really keeping in touch with all the different care teams, the jail reentry team, her jail social worker, her social workers outside of the jail, um, different rehabs that she was in, um, the behavioral health. There were some people there that I kept in touch with, asking them to do something different, because what they were doing was not working. And I felt like the behavioral health people were pointing at the recovery people, and the recovery people were pointing at the behavioral health people. And there was no overlap, it felt like. So, my sister also had mental health problems. She was bipolar. We do have schizophrenia in our genetics, our bloodline as well. So I told them about all that. And I know she was diagnosed. So her dual diagnosis with the substance abuse disorder, along with the mental health disorder, she didn't quite qualify for some of the programs where she couldn't leave.
Mm.
What they told me time and again is that she cleans up well. So if she'd be incarcerated, the drugs would leave her system for some time and she would clean up well, and would not qualify for a recovery program where she didn't have the option to leave. That's where the civil rights come in. You know, she always had the right to leave.
And that's when it becomes your choice to what you got to do. Well,
Yeah.
I'm speaking as a recovering addict myself, and these trips in and out of jail. I took frequent trips in and out of jail, and not excusing it or anything like that, but it's definitely not a reason to be mistreated or abused when you're in the incarceration system. And I think it's a systemic thing, as you're explaining, slipping through these cracks, not qualifying for here, getting the choice to leave there. You know, it's a societal thing that we deal with. And also having, you know, living with addicts or having addicts or alcoholics in the family. I think a lot of people can relate to that on your abilities to really make a difference on your own when the person themselves is just struggling with their decision making. So let me say thank you for being a great sister, for keeping those tabs and doing your best. And let me just ask you to kind of tell us now, leading into what happened to your sister. You talked about kind of her upbringing and, you know, her in and out of the system. But this time in April, she came into the system. Talk about what happened this last time your sister was incarcerated, um, how she slipped through what cracks in your, you know, your opinion, and just tell us kind of what you laid out in the press release.
Okay. Well, I know that she was arrested the week prior as well. She was arrested April 1st, and I imagine it's the same as when she was arrested April 8th. That was her last arrest for in public intoxication and possession of drug paraphernalia in violation of probation. So she would get taken in. This last time she was taken directly off the street into Marin County Jail. Um, And to the best of our knowledge, she had no medical screening at all. She was on April 8th taken into the jail, into a sobering cell at about 1:30 in the afternoon. And we do have the sobering cell observation log. So they did do an observation every 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour tops. So they were following policy in that regard. But I don't know what the observations really entailed. Did they ever did they ever breathalyze her? I don't think they did. I don't think they ever took her out of that jail cell. And she was in there for 18 hours. So the law, and Christian could speak better to this, is that any inmate needs to be seen and assessed medically by a doctor or at least a registered nurse by 6 hours. As far as we can tell, they only looked through the glass or looked through the bars or looked and verified with their eyes that she was still alive. The sobering cell log does show that she was yelling and screaming. I think they thought she was just detoxing, that she was drunk. And they ignored that. Her yelling and screaming, her yelling progressed to screaming. Several different entries for screaming and pacing. She was relatively quiet through the night, a little bit more, and some more screaming in the morning, and then relatively quiet for the last hour or so. She was finally removed from the cell at about 8:30 to be booked. And the police report shows that it says she walked of her own accord to get her fingerprints done. I don't believe that. We've asked for video footage to confirm. I think they're lying because I have her blood work from the hospital and I can see what levels she was at. And there is no way that she walked to that fingerprint machine on her own. They do admit in the police report that they had to literally hold her up to have her mugshot taken. She could not sit up. She collapsed. They eventually brought a wheelchair for her to sit in. They managed to get her mugshot. They managed to get her fingerprints, and then decide maybe we should call in a nurse and have them look at her, which is what happened. The nurse looked at her pupils and saw that she was not really responsive. Maybe we should call an ambulance now. So they promptly release her from custody, and she is transferred over to Marin Health. That was April 9th. I got a call April 10th. I live 4 hours away, so I drove down there, speaking a couple times to the nursing staff at the hospital, and essentially they said there's really nothing we can do. She probably will not make it through the night. I said, just keep her going until I get there, please. So I did. I got there about 10 o'clock. All her kids were there. Her ex-husband was there. I talked with the nursing staff. They said her potassium levels are too high. We cannot bring it back down. So essentially all we can really do is keep her comfortable. So I said, okay. The kids didn't really know what to do. They're all adult children. They're all good kids, really good kids, adult kids. They sort of asked me if I would take the lead on what to do, and we eventually at about 1 o'clock in the morning decided, after we had said everything we needed to say, they'd said what they needed to say to their mom. We prayed over her. We baptized her. Her son Angel got to baptize her. That was very special. And then at about 1 o'clock, we said, are we ready? And the consensus was as ready as we're ever going to be. So we had the nurse unplugged her, and she literally died almost immediately. So that was very hard,
Um,
very hard. And I think we all thought she'd died of an overdose. Um, the medical report shows that there was absolutely no alcohol in her body. So being arrested for being drunk in public was not really the case. What was going on was, I think her kidneys, she had hepatitis C. So her kidneys were in bad shape to start with, kidneys and liver. And looking at the medical report, you can see that her kidneys and liver both failed simultaneously. So there was nothing filtering out the toxins in her body. So over the course of those 18 hours, um, her blood was turning to acid. And I did notice some bruising on her legs. I asked the doctor, what is this bruising? And he said her veins are literally exploding.
wow.
She had bruises all up and down her legs.
I'm so sorry, Amy. Take a moment for yourself. It's hard to hear, and I'm so sorry that this happened to you and your family. And that's the voice of Amy Berry. We're going to give her a second to catch herself. She's really sharing what happened to her sister in custody in Marin County Jail. Again, Amy, so sorry for that. Let me give you a moment to catch your breath. And thank you for sharing that so we can all be aware of what happened. And I'll bring Christian in for a moment. Christian, Amy mentioned maybe the possibility of some video evidence. She talked about the log. What are you looking at as an attorney around obtaining any video, attaining any more information? And just a heads up, we got about 5 or 6 more minutes here, so I just want to give you a chance to tell us legally, what's going on.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you folks. This is a very compelling case for a lot of reasons. You just heard Amy talk about who this person was as a human and as a family member and someone in our society. I think it's important to remember that we live in a humane society, at least we're supposed to. We live in a civilized society, at least we're supposed to. And so it doesn't matter your background, it doesn't matter your station in life, it doesn't matter whether you're currently in custody. The government, whenever they take away your liberty, they're supposed to respect your rights as a person. And here we have the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which provides that everyone, every single person here on this soil has the right to life, liberty, and due process. And so when the government takes away your liberty, when the government takes away your freedom because there are some allegations against you, because everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's the system that we have. And so if the government takes away your liberty, confines you, puts you in a place where you don't have access to resources, they're supposed to ensure that you have everything you need with respect to your medical condition, your safety, and your well-being. And so if they have someone in their hands that they know has a history of a certain medical condition, has a history of drug abuse, has a history of perhaps mental health issues, then they have to take steps to ensure that they don't place someone in an unreasonably safe condition or a condition of confinement that puts their safety in jeopardy. And so this case is very compelling because they knew Tammy. It wasn't some random person that they've never heard of that was just, they had no information about. I would understand that. But here, Tammy had a history with them, and that history put them on notice about the different aspects of her health, of her condition, and her well-being. And so when she got to that jail on the day in question, there was no excuse at all whatsoever to attempt to escalate her level of care to ensure that anything related to perhaps her drug condition, withdrawal is a big aspect of this as well. Withdrawal affects a person's health. And so when it came down to ensuring that she was safe and sound, they failed her, of course, at a system-wide level. And so that's typically the approach with these cases. I could get very technical and legal, but that's typically how I present the case to a jury in terms of just breaking down what the requirements are. Of course, the law says different things. It ranges from negligence, that they didn't exercise reasonable care, to up to the 14th Amendment violation, which says that they intentionally controlled her conditions of confinement, and they knew that those conditions of confinement placed her in an unreasonable risk of harm, and they could have taken other reasonable measures to prevent that risk of harm, but by not doing that, they caused her death. And here, the main thing was that she didn't receive the proper screenings. She didn't receive a medical clearance. She didn't receive the appropriate medical attention. And the bigger issue too is that the individuals in the jail, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not sure they want people to die. They're just not equipped. You're talking about someone who goes to the academy maybe 6 months. Some aren't even going to the academy. Some just go to jail school and they're custody assistants. So that's about maybe 3 months. And you're telling them that here, you're tasked with, at times, essentially screening patients. Here in Los Angeles County, where I'm based out of, we have the largest mental health facility in the world. Twin Towers, the Twin Towers, LA County Sheriff's Department. And so sometimes the issues systemically is that individuals such as jail staff are being tasked with evaluating folks medically at a medical level when they're not even qualified to do that. And so there are just so many systemic issues that I could go on and on and on, but those are just some of the main issues that I'm seeing with this case. But I commend Amy for telling the human story, which is going to be very important in the case, the human side in terms of that Tammy deserved dignity, she deserved respect, she deserved a better life, and it all stops at in this system. She was failed, and it was the jail's obligation, the county's obligation to ensure that her life was preserved, and they failed her, and they failed her family.
Uh, Thank you for that, Christian. That's the voice of Christian Contreras. He's the attorney for the family of Tammy. It's Manzanilla, excuse me. And we've been speaking with Christian, the attorney, and Tammy's sister, Amy. Amy, we are running out of time for this segment here, but I want to give you the last word here. And we talked briefly before we started this interview, and you're working on how to share more information with the public. That hasn't happened yet, and we're going to keep on top of this story for you and keep the word out there. But is there any way you would like folks to reach out to you? Do you want them to follow you on social media? And what would you like to say to folks that are listening and are, hearing this for the first time and, want to stand up with you for your sister?
Uh, I'm not a real techie person, but I do have a Facebook page. So you can find me on Facebook. It's Amy Barry, B as in boy, Arry. I live up by Yosemite, so I'm the Amy Barry. There's a lot of Amy Barrys out there. I live up by Yosemite in a town called Oakhurst. So you can hit me up there. I haven't really decided what to do about this part yet, but I may create a page just bringing more attention to this. I really do hope to see that there's some systemic change in that, like Christian referenced, the training, the insufficient training, the insufficient staffing. Specifically, Marin County Jail is an underground jail, so a lot of the inmates there don't even get outside. They can't. There's not the physical capacity to give them outside room. But yeah, that essentially is what I hope to see change so that nobody else has to go through this. Those 18 hours, I put all her blood work into the computer. I did a stupid thing. I've found out exactly what was going on inside her body, and it was emotionally and physically hell. It borders on torture. The screaming, and they did nothing. So that's got to change. That has got to change. My sister was still a human being. She was loved. She still is loved. So that's That's about it. I thank
Well,
you so much for your time and taking the time to talk to us.
definitely. That's the voice of Amy Berry. She is the sister of Tammy Manzanilla, who died in custody in the Marin County Jail in April this year. Amy, again, our condolences to you. We're going to stick with you and stay in touch with this and follow this case. And hopefully, we will see some systemic change that your sister's death will bring something to help prevent this from happening to another family. So I thank you both very much. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Christian, for being here today and sharing your story.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, Frank.